All right, welcome to TottyTalk. We are, if you are a Tottenham fan and you are tuned in, it has been quite a summer, but it's been quite a week, quite a day. Xavi Simons has officially signed as a Tottenham Hotspur, which is just to me an incredible ending to this transfer window and all the directions that we've been pulled in. And if you know this player, you know he's electric. You know the word that he used to describe himself in his entry video was flair. So you know that side of it, hopefully, if you've ever seen any of his highlights. But in his interview today, when he talked about why he signed with the club, he said that it was because Thomas Frank laid out, a plan for him, and that he feels really confident about, the plan going forward. So this is a fantastic thing. This is a great signing for Tottenham, obviously. Uh, this really sets us up, I think, and I said earlier this week that I feel very confident that up until the Chelsea game, which I believe is towards Thanksgiving, we will be undefeated. I think we should win all the games, to be honest. I know there's an international break. I know there's going to be Champions League. There's going to be other things going on, but I just felt like even with the existing roster and the way that they've been playing and the buy-in that we've been getting, obviously taking out injuries, but it felt like we were in a very good place. I think what Xavi Simons does for us is obviously in the Champions League, now we have some players that, like we saw with Kudus in the Super Cup, just absolutely have the ability to do something that, we could remember for sort of the rest of our lives, to be honest. They're that caliber of player. Another thing about this signing is that Xavi Simons is 22 years old. Eze is 27. Now Savinho's 21, so put Savinho to the side again. I said earlier this week that I never really thought that was something that City would be likely to allow to happen. So was not super surprised that it didn't. But in terms of Eze, it really feels like, and there's been a lot of criticism on Levy. It doesn't feel very fair to me, because again, from what we knew about Eze, from what was documented when he was younger, is he was an Arsenal fan. So I think the idea of going to Tottenham and the way it was sort of taking a long time anyway should have probably tipped us off. But that felt like there was never a real chance. So to have both of those fall through, for Levy to get the abuse that he gets, and then instead he's able to swing a young player who, again, if you're someone who is even just plays FIFA, this is a player that you know and a player that you're excited about. So I mean, this is just incredible. And when you hear Thomas Frank and Simons both talk about both sides of the conversations, it sounds like again Simons really Thomas Frank was the selling point. Thomas Frank put on a presentation for him, and he said that was what really solidified his decision. And obviously, I should have mentioned this too. We stole him from Chelsea, which how fantastic is that? Doesn't get better than that. So really just a very exciting thing. One of the interesting things that will be interesting, a little self-imposed pressure, is Simons chose to take number 7, which obviously was Son's number, and that that is a quick turnaround for the number 7. But maybe in other sports it would, again, it's not the number 10, but it's not American sports where we're putting numbers up in the rafters left and right like this happens for some of these franchises. But man, that was quick. So that'll be an interesting thing to see just how he wears it. And sort of, will he be throwing out sun celebrations? That'd be kind of cool. Maybe he does that his first goal or something like that. So that'll be fun to watch and to pay attention to. But I'm really hoping that I'm gonna see people coming out and supporting Daniel Levy. I really think, and not just important. I mean, the same amount of funny to wouldn't want people to know is on my feed memes that I saw about Daniel Levy. I hope to see the same volume positively because I really feel that again he gets maligned in a way that I do not think is deserving, and I have to be honest, it's a little brutish, it's a little caveman when we start getting on this guy for again, especially in this transfer window. I think situations that were never going to come to fruition, and it really was. Of course, you get caught up in it, you get excited, you're hopeful, but when they fall through, I just some of the vitriol was, I think, a little misplaced. Let's put it that way. But so it had me think about before we preview the game with Bournemouth tomorrow. It just made me think about from Levy's coaching decisions. Because let's go back to Pochettino, right? Which is really for me when I sort of became a Tottenham fan. If you're someone who's there before me and you hate Levy for whatever like things before that, then okay, fine. Like you could probably out-knowledge me, but I think for many an active fan right now, it's the that Champions League run. That's really, I think, the last time it's felt as good as it feels now. Listen, I've had hope every year, but maybe realistic hope. But so after Pochettino, we go to Mourinho. Now, with the Mourinho, we get the the Amazon show, and you have the famous now with Dele Alli and him possibly retiring. You have the famous video of Mourinho and Dele, or I was going to say talking, but really it was more Mourinho lecturing to Dele in his office. But again, I don't. It was an exciting decision when it happened. I think obviously it was criticized because you had Kane and Spurs. Obviously have a history of being defensive, this, and that. But again, like I don't know how you can be all that upset about a high caliber coach like that. And again, like for the business of the club, I don't think it was a bad thing. So after Mourinho, obviously I didn't add in it Ryan Mason or Stellini. I thought the firing of Mourinho, right, that cup. I mean, it is an interesting. And listen, Spurs looked really bad. But before we talk about Nuno, let me take him off for a second. That firing of Mourinho the right before the EFL final against or the Carabao Cup against City, tough. And that was another game where, by the way, Harry Kane was hurt, and you still had to play him because he's Harry Kane. But added to the list of opportunities squandered because we felt we had to play Harry Kane. But so anyway, that team was unwell, I think, and it was sort of the beginning of the unraveling. Then we had Nuno for about 5 minutes. This was a horrible decision. This is the one that, and maybe that's why I made him smaller. Not really, I made him smaller just because he's so irrelevant. I feel like in the span of Spurs in the last couple of years. But this was a horrible decision. This was a terrible decision. I hated it from the moment it happened. I hated it from the moment we saw the first game, and I forgot to look before I got on, but he did not last very long. Then we brought in Conte. Now listen, I will be honest that I maybe did not know exactly what we were going to get in terms of his style, but I thought this was a bold move, and I actually very much liked it at the time. And I have to be honest, I actually agreed, even though the press conference, I don't know if this is from the actual press conference where he went and essentially said it's the team. It's not me, it's the team. But it felt like that at the time. It did feel like we just didn't have the focus we certainly have now. Okay, so again, like, I don't think that's a bad decision by Levy. I think that's a bold decision by Levy. I support that decision. And then, after him, we get our boy Ange. Which, again, at the time, it was an exciting decision. I thought this was a cool decision. We thought you had hit on someone. And arguably, you won a trophy. And then all that led us to, obviously, the coach that we want, and now the guy that we have now, Thomas Frank, which is, obviously, I mean, he is just absolutely beloved. And if you watched his press conference before this Bournemouth game, like he's having a great time. And it was before the signing of Xavi, but it was when it was obviously imminent. But again, and maybe I'll do more on just Levy's decision making, and obviously players that he didn't get is probably more of the criticism. But I have to say that when you look at the management decisions, and again, I'm not including Ryan Mason here or there, Stellini, whatever, they're bold. They're bold. Except for Nuno, again, terrible. But I have no issue with, again, besides Nuno, I have no issue with what we went through, okay? In terms of like, and maybe there was better. I'd love to debate it with you, but in terms of, it was a good time. Maybe I won't look back at them as fondly as I will certainly look at hopefully this Thomas Frank time. But I always felt that there was just some, and I hate to say this, but like there was something about that team that just they didn't have the edge. They didn't have the edge that they needed, and none of these coaches could give it to them, and I think that was part of the decision making, and I can't disagree with it. So let's look really quick at the Bournemouth lineup. So this game's at 10 a.m. tomorrow morning, so probably if you get out on the podcast, you're not gonna listen to this before, but I did have a comment on this when I put on Instagram that you might see Bergvall get a start. I don't know, because I do understand that Thomas Frank does sort of play the opponent, but at the same time, who knows? Maybe I'll be learning something about Thomas Frank tomorrow, but I look at this lineup, especially with Richarlison and striker, right? I mean, I think Solanke is going to have to not fight necessarily, but to me, Richarlison is the striker right now. He's playing too well. Obviously, Kudus on the right, and I think Johnson's gonna hold the left. I think he's earned that over Odegaard, or Tell, obviously, and then in the midfield, I don't know why you would not go with Bentancur, Sarr, and Palhinha. Like that's it, Udogie is available. I do think Spence will get the start. And that was one thing that I haven't fully touched on yet, so now's the perfect time. Jed Spence getting the call up to England. Huge. Well deserved. Always love that guy. I've been promoting him since day one of the podcast and long before that. And just awesome. Love it. It's amazing. I thought Thomas Frank at his press conference really was so supportive about it, and it's just an awesome, great thing. Totally deserved. Very exciting thing. And then obviously Van Romero, Porro. So this is the way I see us lining up. And again, I think this game is very winnable because as great as Bournemouth is, they had a lot of turnover. They lost some really high quality players. And I think if we had a leakier Spurs like we were last year, you could have a rock fight here. I don't think Thomas Frank is going to allow this to be a rock fight. And so I think you're going to see Spurs holding another clean sheet. I'll tell you that. I'm definitely predicting a clean sheet. But I also think Spurs will score. So there's your win right there. So I have Spurs winning tomorrow. Obviously, not like you're going to hear much different from me. After that, we have the international break. So it'll be exciting to see Richarlison played for Brazil. I'm sure Brennan Johnson got called up for Wales. And, so many others and obviously Jed Spence for England. So, I guess we'll leave it there. Don't forget, Pep Sarr shot on goal tomorrow. I haven't looked at it yet, but I promise you it's at least plus 150, probably plus 200. It's almost a lock for me, in my opinion. So, have a great one. We'll see you next time.